This narrated PowerPoint is over the digestive system, specifically the human digestive system, although most of the higher level animals that are omnivores or carnivores have very similar digestive tracts to humans. We're going to walk through the system in the order that a piece of food would travel through it, starting at the beginning with the mouth and ending at the anus. The mouth starts both the mechanical and the chemical digestion of food. The teeth break down the food into smaller pieces, and salivary amylase, which is an enzyme in your saliva, starts breaking down the carbohydrates in the food. This is why you can completely dissolve a saltine cracker in your mouth without any effort at all. You just hold it in your mouth, it dissolves. But you cannot completely dissolve a piece of steak in your mouth. The back of your throat is called the pharynx, and it has two openings in it. One leads to the trachea and eventually to your lungs, and then the other one leads to the esophagus and eventually to your stomach. Food is supposed to go down one pathway, and air is supposed to go down the other pathway, and never the twain shall meet. And if they do meet, you end up coughing compulsively to try to get that food out of your airways. A very interesting flap of tissue called the epiglottis keeps the swallowed food from entering the trachea and kind of directs it down the esophagus. And you can see this in the picture with that blue arrow that is pointing at the epiglottis. And this is a very frustrating piece of tissue for most anesthesiologists because you have to place a tube down the trachea of humans or pets that are going under anesthesia, and the epiglottis tries to prevent that because it doesn't want solid objects going down the trachea. The esophagus is a tubular structure that transports food to the stomach. The smooth muscle, which is found in the digestive tract, has rhythmic contractions that are called peristalsis that actually propel or push food through the system. And there's a video on Blackboard where you can see kind of a short clip that shows what peristalsis is like. It's very interesting, so you should check that out. The lower esophageal sphincter is located at the junction of the esophagus and the stomach, and it's what keeps you from vomiting or regurgitating food back up into your esophagus from your stomach. The stomach secretes hydrochloric acid through epithelial glands and digestive enzymes like pepsin to help break down protein as you're digesting your food. The pH of the stomach is around 2 normally, which is extremely acidic. But that's a good thing because it's able to kill off a lot of harmful bacteria or viruses that you routinely are ingesting with your food and with your drink. There's a thick layer of mucus lining the stomach to actually protect the stomach wall from the acid that it's producing. But if you don't make enough of that mucus, or especially if you have an area, a medication you're on, or alcohol can affect this, or you're not making mucus in a particular location, you can actually develop an ulcer in that location. So when you hear people talking about stomach ulcers, what that is it's basically the stomach trying to digest itself, and if it perforates all the way through, that can actually be a life-threatening condition. Or if it hits a blood vessel where you have a bleeding ulcer, that can be very dangerous as well. The stomach also churns and mixes food in with the digestive secretions. And so that new material that's composed of food mixed with digestive enzymes, that is called chyme. The pyloric sphincter is going to regulate the passage of the chyme from the stomach into the small intestines, and it prevents a backup of material in the small intestine. But the sphincter is why if you eat too much or you drink too much and you overfill your stomach, you tend to just vomit that back up instead of it moving on through. The small intestine mixes the chyme with more digestive enzymes for kind of the final breakdown of food. The small intestine is extremely long, and this is important because it allows time for nutrients to be absorbed from the food as it's passing through. The small intestine also secretes digestive hormones into the bloodstream that will encourage the absorption of the nutrients by the cells. The small intestine is divided into 3 parts. The duodenum or the duodenum is the first, which is the first part right after the stomach. The jejunum is the longest part, and it's kind of in the middle. And then the ileum is the last little bit, and that's what empties into the large intestine. The duodenum is connected to the pancreas and the gallbladder and liver through these little tiny passageways that are called ducts. The ducts allow digestive enzymes to be secreted from these organs into the first part of the small intestine as food enters it. The pancreas, in addition to making digestive enzymes, also produces a buffer to help neutralize the acid that's coming in with the chyme from the stomach, because you wouldn't want to digest your duodenum with that stomach acid. The digestive enzymes secreted by the gallbladder originally come from the liver. The gallbladder is just a storage container for that, but those enzymes help break up fat. The pancreas, the gallbladder, and the liver are all considered to be accessory organs to the digestive tract. In addition to making bile, the liver also purifies and detoxifies the blood that's coming from the intestines before it reaches general circulation. So if you eat something that has a high bacterial load, as that is being absorbed in your intestines, that blood that now contains that bacteria or potentially that toxin is actually going to go to your liver first, and your liver is going to take care of that and purify it before sending that blood on to the rest of your body. The liver also makes proteins that are involved in regulating blood volume and helping you clot when you injure yourself and you bleed. So if the liver isn't working well, there can be a variety of signs with that, anywhere from bleeding problems to low protein in the blood, or if the bile system gets clogged, that excessive bile can actually build up in the bloodstream. Bile has a greenish-yellow color due to the pigment bilirubin, which is made from the breakdown of hemoglobin. When bilirubin builds up in the tissues, it gives them a yellowish color, and that color is called jaundice. So if you hear somebody talk about a jaundiced person or a jaundiced animal, they have a yellow tint to their skin, and that is related to bilirubin, which has to do with the liver and the gallbladder. Sometimes this tint to the skin is subtle and it's hard to see, but sometimes it is so obvious that it looks like the person or the pet ate mustard. You can see in this upper side the cat has very yellow tinted gums, and on the lower right hand side the pinna of the ear, the inside of the ear, has kind of a greenish yellow tinge to it, and that is not normal under any circumstances. Liver failure is a pretty common complication in cats that aren't eating, and it can actually complicate other disease processes. So if they're not eating because they have a urinary tract infection, that's kind of one problem. But then if they go into liver failure because they're not eating because of the urinary tract infection, then you've got two major issues that can be hard to deal with. So typically I recommend if you have a cat and it's not eating for between 12 to 24 hours, it really needs to be seen by a vet, because if you wait a few days, sometimes you push them to the point where they go into liver failure, and then you're dealing with more problems than you even started with. The small intestine is where the majority of nutrient absorption from the food occurs. The large intestine is where the majority of water absorption from food occurs. There is no digestion of food in the colon. All that's happening in the colon is water is getting absorbed back into your system. So if the food does not spend enough time in the large intestine, if it goes through the intestine too fast, then not enough water is reabsorbed and you end up with diarrhea. If the food spends too much time in the large intestine, then too much water ends up getting resorbed and your feces get very dry and you end up with constipation. Fiber is one of the most important things that helps regulate the times in the large intestine. So having the appropriate amounts of fiber will help make sure that you have the appropriate amounts of water being absorbed and the food stays in your colon the right amount of time and you have regular feces. Just some fun facts about feces. They are made up of about 75% water and about 25% solid material. And of that solid material, about 1/3 of it is just bacteria. The rest of the solid material is undigestible plant matter, mucus, dead cells from your intestinal lining, and just other waste products that your body doesn't need. The bacteria, though, that's what gives the distinctive odor that most feces has. The rectum is the last internal bit of the colon, and then the anus is the opening to the outside through which the feces exit.